surgeon-guided, technology-driven, robotic arm-assisted surgical technology for hip and knee replacements. Available at Kansas Spine and Specialty Hospital, proud sponsor of KPTS, Public Television for Kansas.
The following program is brought to you by TZ Productions, celebrating KPTS's nearly 50 years of community support in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
It's time for Hatteberg's People. Coming up, we're going to show you how a Wichita man is playing the odds and restoring old slot machines. You'll see why selling them is a lot more lucrative than playing them.
Also, he was the last of his kind. The shoeshine man at the Sedgwick County courthouse was lamenting changing times when I talked with him back in 2005.
Plus, we make tracks to Wellington and visit this train museum that was the brainchild of Perry Wiley. It is a fun trip back to the heydays of riding the rails.
And you'll meet Norma Hannaford. Now, she was a $1.03 and still cranking out her column for the Marion County Record. It was a must-read every week. Hi, everybody. I'm Larry Hatteberg.
And I'm Susan Peters. Those stories and more coming your way. Hatteberg's People starts right now.
These stories are like old friends. Their lives radiate from the screen like prophets of the past. They were teachers, but not in a classroom. Instead, they taught about life to those around them who cared to listen, and I was their student. Hi, everybody. It is great to have you with us.
We're going to begin tonight with the story of a Wichita man who had the idea of making money with slot machines.
Yeah, not playing them. Now, that's a risky proposition that seldom pays off, as we all know, because we've all been to Vegas.
Yeah.
Instead, Don Creekmore saw an opportunity in the nostalgia market for rusty old machines that could be restored to their original state.
It is the lure of the money, the chance that millions are lurking behind the pull of a slot machine handle. For most, though, it is just a way to pass the time. But the machines themselves are fascinating.
It doesn't seem like I'm working during the day.
In a Wichita warehouse, Don Creekmore is surrounded by slots, old ones waiting to be repaired.
It seems like these machines, they almost exude history.
He just started a new internet business called Nation's Attic. He deals with vintage slot machines made prior to 1951. It's not legal in Kansas to own the later models.
I enjoy making people happy when I can provide them with a machine that's brought back from the grave, essentially. And when I can bring them back and be a functional, essentially a piece of artwork now, that's really what I enjoy.
Creekmore was repairing them part-time, but this young entrepreneur decided that there was money to be made in a full-time business. So now he's receiving machines from all over the U.S. waiting to be restored.
And they always seem to be good and dirty, just like this one.
Don says he's researched the slot machines that date back to the 1890s, and the fun for him is checking into the history of each machine.
I almost sometimes put myself back into the time of the machine, from the 50s or the 40s, like I'm actually playing the machine and gambling with it. But it's also a good feeling when it works, too.
Finding the machines is the hard part, but once found, Creekmore says they can be sold in a day.
Sometimes it's collectors that just want the machine to look better, but a lot of times it's people with, that have a history or a connection with it.
So at least for one Wichitan who's gambling on success with a one-armed bandit, he could be a winner.
I'm not a big gambler.
I'm Larry Hatteberg.
I'd rather gamble on buying and selling.
Now, Don and his wife are still in the antique restoration business. Another of his specialties is dealing in antique diving helmets. Who would have thought that?
That's odd.
Now, their business is called Nation's Attic, and they buy and sell all over the world. Thank goodness for the internet, because you can do that. You can live in Wichita, Kansas, and sell in Borneo and Tasmania.
And Tasmania. And we hear they're doing very well.
They are doing very well. That's what we hear.
Exactly.
All
okay.
right.
Shiny shoes. I had them when I was a youngster. They'll never go out of style. But as a profession, shoe shine men have virtually all gone by the wayside. You'll still find them in a few places such as airports, but up until a few years ago, you could get your shoes shined at the Sedgwick County Courthouse.
Yeah, the man with the polish was Buddy Crumble, and a lot of you will remember him. Now, when I visited with him in 2005, times had changed much faster than Buddy was ready for.
I enjoy doing what I'm doing.
Buddy Crumble is deep in the organization. The organization is the Sedgwick County Courthouse.
I like what I'm doing, and I like to be around people.
And Buddy is here, shining shoes in the basement.
I really want to get back upstairs because down in the basement, I ain't making no money.
I met him one day mid-afternoon. I was his third customer. He used to be up here in the lobby of the courthouse, but all that changed after 9/11. Because of all the added security, Buddy was moved to the basement, among the boxes with the prophetic labels. For him, down here, time and customers pass slowly.
I enjoy doing what I'm doing.
At home in his small apartment, jazz is also part of Buddy's life, his hands constantly moving to the beat of the jazz masters. Sacks full of CDs nearby, and one of his life's dreams was to own a jazz club.
Yes, sir.
But time and circumstance have taken care of that. At work, you might say he's lost the beat. Growing up in a family of 13, he's been shining since he was 16. But because of his basement location now, Buddy says people can't find him, and he's not making any money.
A lot of my customers say, I would like to come and see him, but I just don't like to come in the basement.
The county, while sympathetic, says Buddy will stay here in the basement. With the added security, there's just no place on the first floor for a shoeshine man. So at 73, Buddy Crumble will probably have to move on. Another silent victim to changing times. I'm Larry Hatteberg.
Well, the best efforts of many people, including judges and lawyers at the courthouse, to bring Buddy back upstairs, well, never came to fruition. And then in 2008, Buddy passed away at age 77 after more than 30 years of shining shoes at the Sedgwick County Courthouse. This is one of those deals in which everybody felt bad for him, everybody wanted to help him, but nothing worked. He had to stay in the basement of the courthouse, and he didn't like it very
We're
much.
lucky we had him for 30 years.
He was a good man.
Everybody who's entered that courthouse, or who had entered that courthouse, remembers Buddy.
Sure, and everybody went, they took him their shoes, the lawyers, the judges, everybody took him the shoes down there, and he faithfully shined them, but life doesn't always go your way, and Buddy is a good example of that.
You
He's a
said
good
it,
guy.
Larry. Okay, now we're going to go to a Wellington man who had a collection of train memorabilia that just kept growing.
Now, it grew to the point that it threatened to take over his whole house, so he teamed up with the city. And now there's a place where anybody can come and enjoy Perry's marvelous collection.
A kid in all of us love trains. There is something about these metal monsters that people like Perry Wiley want us to remember. To remember in his own personal Wellington train museum.
It's in a great setting. We're here with an old iron horse of the Santa Fe, and that it's in a historic building. Inside is all the memorabilia that I've been able to gather up so far.
The city-owned building was perfect for the museum, and Perry jumped at the chance to display his train memorabilia.
It's not really as good. You don't enjoy it as much unless you can share it with somebody. To me, it's preserving a part of the past, and of course, we need to remember the past in order to even appreciate the future.
The museum is full of little moments of train history, like these old spittoons. What was acceptable then, certainly not acceptable now.
No, and you don't see them used, thankfully.
Outside, more history sits on nearby tracks.
It makes the museum a lot more interesting just to have it there. The wife is probably responsible for me having some of these higher dollar items, because she said, if you want them, you better get them now because they won't be available later. So that's all I needed to go ahead and get them. It's going to bring, I think, people to town that will come just to see this museum. Practically every position on the railroad had a specific designation. Of course, you had your conductor, you had your porter, and I hope to get a sample of all of them someday, but some of them are hard to come by.
Perry Wiley loves this memorabilia because he worked for the railroad, having many jobs, but ended up being an engineer. And there's just something about that power.
Knowing that it's all up to you as to whether you was going to get it to the other end of the line in one piece or not.
He always did, and now those memories are for others to see and enjoy at the Panhandle Railroad Museum in Wellington, Kansas.
We tend to remember the good and forget the bad.
Well, that was 2005, and since then, the Panhandle Railroad Museum has continued to thrive.
Isn't that cool? I didn't
is.
know about that.
Well, you have to go down and visit it now.
I will, absolutely. Perry and his wife still run it, and they say the only thing that's changed is the size of their collection of memorabilia. It just keeps getting bigger.
Well, when people are interested in something and they like to collect memorabilia, people know that and they bring them all sorts of things. But train memorabilia, there are so many train buffs all over the country that, you know, he gets a lot of visitors from them.
My brother-in-law, huge train buff. I'm going to have to tell him about this. He's going to have to come all the way from California to see it.
To Wellington, Kansas. All right. Well, for many generations, small-town newspapers have been the glue that hold those small towns together. But a newspaper is only good as the journalists who work there.
And in Marion, one of those ace reporters was Norma Hannaford. She always got the scoop, even at age 103.
Almost every town has a water tower. Every town has a main street. But no other town has a reporter like Norma Hannaford.
Well, the hardest part is think, what am I going to write?
At 103, she is a columnist for the Marion County Record. She began working for them when she was younger, at 96.
And I knew of a lady up at Salina that had done it from a nursing home, and I thought, well, maybe if she can do it, I can do it. So I did.
You can pretty much set your watch by her that her stuff will be here on Monday regardless.
Donna Bernhardt is her editor.
She's a voracious reader, and she knows, you know, she knows everything about Marion.
I wouldn't know how to act in a big town like Wichita.
She writes about anything she feels like writing about.
Oh, they say, keep going, keep going. We like it, the first thing we read in the paper.
And then there are those who I think follow her because she's always willing to review the books that she's reading, and she'll tell you, you know, whether they're good or whether they're not any good.
I'm up to date. I'm old and up to date.
She also reviews books like Calvin Trillin's About Alice, a book about Trillin losing his wife. Norma says the book is a wonderful tribute to her.
I get stirred up about something, I think, well, I'm going to say something about that.
And there was another column about what teachers should wear, she writes. Evidently, some of the teachers in Wichita dress pretty casually. It was even suggested they wear uniforms like nurses or the military. I'll bet they wouldn't like that.
I'm just being me. I don't know. That's just it.
Norma was a bit embarrassed about all this publicity. As she writes in her kitchen longhand on a yellow pad, she was concerned that her kitchen was a bit too messy to be photographed. It wasn't, but that's when she told me that she thought perhaps she would rather have surgery than talk to Larry Hatteberg.
I used to think I wanted to be in the movies, but now I know I don't want to.
I think she was joking. At this little newspaper in Marion, Norma Hannaford's Random Thoughts column is special. At 103, in her home, surrounded by pictures of her travels, this woman of words is still working.
I suppose all this reading I do, and I've traveled a lot. I've been to Europe about 4 or 5 times, been to China, and I have a curiosity for people and places.
She's a fabulous lady, and I just think that, you know, she's a draw for the editorial page for Marion.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, all those kind words are very nice to an old lady.
Well, Norma passed away 3 years later in 2010, and she was 106. And folks in Marion have missed her column ever since. Anytime you get a writer like Norma, who was incredible and known and beloved by the community, all she had to do was to put that, all the editor had to do was to put that column in the paper, and everybody would read it. I think it was probably the most popular column they ever had.
I bet it's the first thing they went to when they opened the paper.
And people do miss it.
Yeah, I bet they do. We miss Norma.
Yeah, unfortunately.
An Amish couple from Kentucky had a dream. They wanted to open their own bakery and deli while pursuing their faith.
Well, that dream came true when Bruce and Mary Files moved to Linden, Kansas. And in doing so, they accomplished a couple of things. One, everybody seemed to agree that their food was great. And two, people in that small town got an up-close and personal look at Amish life through this friendly couple.
When the deadline's crunching and you're panicking, then it gets to be work. But it's kind of fun to come up with something people like.
And people like this little bakery and deli in Linden, Kansas. That's Bruce out front, while his wife and 4 children work inside.
I would hope that where I might have, and my wife might have made a difference is people looked at our lives and saw something different, and they would remember us for that.
That's Catherine, BJ, Elaine, John, and Bruce's wife, Mary.
Part of our faith is, you know, the separate dress and everything, and I think when you have a separateness, you expect questions. You want to cut those? Thanks, John.
And questions about their Amish Mennonite faith are constant.
So,
they're used to it, and they don't mind.
Not really.
All around the store, their faith is evident. But it is a quiet faith. The Amish Mennonites are not pushy people.
People usually, they're interested and they're very nice. They're not being mean or nasty. They're just curious, and so part of that being curious is asking questions.
From the faith point of view, being what we would call separate, some people would say peculiar, actually is an opening for us, because people do have questions, and it gives us an opportunity to share things we might not, or they might be uncomfortable with if we just brought it up. Thank you, Mildred.
Their little store sells grains and jams, much of it imported from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where a strong Amish community flourishes. In addition to the bakery, they also make deli sandwiches, thick with many different breads that fit the palate of local workers.
A lot of people have questions about what we're about, and we like sharing that. We like sharing our faith.
They live rural. They don't have some of the so-called necessities of our lives, but they don't totally shun the world. They use computers in their business and, of course, electricity. But there are no TVs, nor DVDs, none.
We do other things. We have games. We talk.
The television, I have seen it, and for me, it's not too much of a temptation.
You can't control something like that, and you let it in the house, and the children have control of it.
I have a lot of friends who are non-Mennonite, and they tell me I'm not missing much.
In this world of fresh-baked pastries, jars with unfamiliar labels, and a strong work ethic, there is a peace.
There it is.
A quiet joy.
If he's going to be in here, I make him work.
Well, absolutely. That's the way to do it. Well, listen, thank you, and have a good day.
Take care, Don.
Well, unfortunately, that little cafe, it only lasted for a few years. It's not always easy to make a go of things in rural Kansas, as we all know. But people in Linden still talk about those delicious sandwich that they used to get there.
Yeah, I
You know, not
imagine
everything lasts forever, and not everything works.
But they tried, and that's all you can do. And their legacy is living on because they're on Hatteberg's People in 2018.
That's right. And people there learned about the Amish lifestyle. So it's a win-win.
Okay, here's something else that no longer exists. It was a little gem of a hotel that a lot of people probably never even knew about.
Yeah, this was a charming little hideaway in Wichita that came and went. I was there in 1996, just before it went away forever.
When the Max Paul goes, there will be quite a bit of me that goes too.
The Max Paul Inn wasn't just a place to stay. It was an escape from the conscious world to a refuge of feather beds, eclectic furnishings, and a hominess reminiscent of an aging French chateau.
I just think we were lucky, very lucky to have this experience.
Roberta Eaton and her sister Jill started the Max Paul, named for their father. No one really expected 2 women could make it work.
And after we opened, the inspectors came around, well, I didn't think you girls could do that. And we did. We did an awful lot nobody ever expected of us. And I think that's what happened to the Max Paul. I think that the Max Paul was much more than anyone ever expected it to be.
In addition to the 2 young women whose personalities gave the inn class and style, it was the rooms that folks remembered.
I've always liked this room because it seems the most secluded. It seems the most removed and remote. When we started, of course, we didn't have a lot of money, and we had a lot of rooms, and a lot of walls, a lot of space. So it became an actual job to garage sale and go to estate sales.
And people loved it. Rooms with personalities, unique, all reflecting the tastes of the women who dreamed the Max Paul dream into reality.
But you know, there's that Brigadoon story, you know, it's here today, gone tomorrow, we'll be back in the future sometime, someplace. And I would rather that the Max Paul just kind of disappear like that than to have it trail off into something less than it ever was.
And it will soon become part of Wichita's history. The construction of Kellogg will see the end of the Max Paul. It won't move, won't be rebuilt. It was simply a moment in time.
I can close the inn because you can't go back. It will never be, as it ages, I mean the inn ages, the people here age, it will never be exactly what it was in the beginning. But I don't know that we would want it to be.
It's a bittersweet time now that the end is near.
To me, I think I'll just spend some time in each room and kind of reminisce over how it came to be and what was unique about that room and the little things about it that delighted us as we did it. And in many ways, the Max Paul allowed me to be as gracious to people as probably my mother taught me to be. So what would have been really hard work really wasn't that hard. It was long hours, but you know, people were so good to us.
Well, I think everybody will remember the Max Paul Inn. So many people spent their honeymoon at that place. It was very, very romantic little place.
They don't build hotels like that anymore.
No.
Quaint, romantic, darling.
It was great, and unfortunately the enlargement of Kellogg took it out.
Progress. What can you do with progress? You can't stop it.
You can't stop it, but you can certainly remember the history.
Very well said, Larry. Okay, that's a wrap for this week. Thanks, Larry, for sharing all those great stories with us. Listen every week, and we're glad you kept them all.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, and thanks to everybody for watching. Now remember, if you have a question or a comment, please fire it off an email to us right here. hattebergspeople@kpts.org is the email address, and we love hearing from you. Until next week, I'm Larry Hatteberg.
I'm Susan Peters. Please join us next time for more great classics from the Hatteberg Vault. We're going to see you then. Bye.
The preceding program was brought to you by TZ Productions, supporting KPTS and the communities it serves in South Central Kansas. Great starts here on KPTS.
Support also comes from viewers like you. Thank you. For a free copy of this program, become a new member of KPTS for a $40 contribution. If you are already a member, just send $25 for shipping and handling. Be sure to include the program's name, date, and time.